Cash Flow Diary Podcast, episode 496.
Welcome to yet another exciting episode of the Cash Flow Diary Podcast, the podcast that teaches you insider tips, tactics, and strategies for creating leverage streams of cash flow into your life. Learn from top-performing entrepreneurs, business owners, investors, and thought leaders from across the globe as they share their secrets to success. Like what you learn on this and other Cash Flow Diary podcast episodes? Go to learninvestingnow.com and sign up to receive powerful tips and information that will help you succeed as an entrepreneur and investor. Now, here's your host, investor, entrepreneur, business owner, educator, speaker, author, and master facilitator of Robert Kiyosaki's cash flow game, Jay Massey.
All right, ladies and gentlemen, welcome to another episode of the Cash Flow Diary Podcast. I'm your host, Jay Massey, and I'm glad that you are here today because you have heard me say it before. And yes, I will say it again, because here's what I know. Some of you may not have actually heard it, but more importantly, it bears repeating. Where you start is not necessarily where you stay. See, when you start out in business, you may be in position A, job A, business A, but what's most important is to understand this fundamental truth. You and I, we will never out-earn our personal growth, which by definition means we should always be growing. Yes, you may have gone to college, but guess what? You have to keep growing. You may have a PhD like me, public high school diploma, but you still have to keep growing. At the end of the day, when you are an entrepreneur, we go out there, we create value, and we do it using the skill sets and talents that we have been given. And I hope you just go gain more and more. And today's guest is a perfect example of doing exactly that. I have with me none other than Nely Galan. She's the former president of Telemundo. Yes, the television station that you know and love. But most importantly, serial entrepreneur, author of a book, Self-Made, which I think is interesting because for those of you women, I am talking to you right now. Please, you know how I feel. I love it. Being a father of 3 daughters, I want more women entrepreneurs, and you're going to listen to one of them. You're going to hear from one of them today, which I'm pretty excited about it. And for those of you like myself who can feel that you are climbing this uphill battle just because of the way you may look, at the end of the day, I think today is going to be a source of inspiration for you. But what's really cool is that Nely's not done growing. She's going to share that journey with you and I. And most importantly, I hope you are ready to listen. I hope you are ready to learn and definitely love Nely Galan. Nely, how you doing?
I'm doing great. I'm so excited to hear a little bit of your story too, because I think what you said is so right on the money, which is it doesn't matter where you begin and it doesn't matter what obstacle course you've been through in your life. The great thing about Self-Made is that it's a mindset, and it's a mindset that, even if my friends say to me, does that mean you don't believe in God? And I go, no, God made me. But if I don't help God out, if I don't DIY myself all the time, if I don't make myself over, and if I don't take complete personal responsibility for my financial well-being, for my happiness, for everything in my life, it's not going to work.
Now, this being the first time that you're here, before we get too far deep into it, I have to ask you the same question I tend to ask everybody else the first time that they're here. Are you ready?
Mm-hmm. Yep.
Okay. I tend to look at today's entrepreneurs a lot like yesterday's superheroes. Batman, Robin, Wonder Woman, Superwoman, etc. You get the idea. Because I think entrepreneurs and superheroes have a ton of things in common, chief among them. Occasionally as an entrepreneur, I can envision myself using our products and services, flying around town and saving and rescuing our customers one sale at a time. And yes, I probably am wearing a cape. Now, also like a superhero, an entrepreneur has a beginning. So if you think about Spider-Man, for example, there was a time, he was just a kid going to school, doing his thing, trying to take some photos, get some pizza money. And then one day something special happens to him. He gets bit by a spider, discovers I've got this superhuman ability, and he gets to choose to use it for good or for evil. So my question to you is as follows. Before Telemundo, before the Adelante Movement, before your book Self-Made, before everything we know you for today, what we want to know is, who is Nely Galan?
I will tell you. So I'm an immigrant. My parents fled Communist Cuba when I was 4 years old, and I got to the United States. My poor parents lost everything from one day to the next and really left Cuba like so many political refugees, and we're seeing today in the news, in a very terrible situation where the banking system had collapsed and all the money was gone, and where there was no longer freedom of speech, where people who talked against the government were put in jail. And so we escaped. And when we came here, my parents were, and I think it's important to tell this story because I do think in America, we don't, a lot of my, especially my African-American friends say to me, why are Latinos so quiet? And I really get that because I feel so bad that African-Americans have to be the voice for everyone. But when most of us that come from Latin America or countries in the Caribbean have had such trauma that when we come here, first, we're grateful, we're just even somewhere else. And then, your parents have a lot of trauma. So I grew up with parents that were like, stay, just keep everything low key, don't speak up, be quiet, you just don't rock anything. We don't want to ever get kicked out. And I was really like the little translator, the therapist, the accountant from the time I was 5. And very much an introvert, quiet person. I think, people that know me, they go, my God, you're a beast. And I go, well, voices are cultivated over time. I was very shy and introverted, but I did have my superhero moment. I think in the 7th grade, my parents saw that I was very good in school, and a lot of Latino and immigrant people bet on a horse. Like they decide, we have multiple kids, this one's really smart, let's invest in this one because this one, if you're an athlete or if you're smart, they think, you're going to take care of the whole family, which we do. And my parents invested in me by sending me to all-girl Catholic school, which at that time they thought was the good prep school to get into college. And I was going to this middle school, but I'd overhear my parents at night, like many immigrants do, saying, what are we going to do? We can't afford the school. Oh my God. And they were worrying about it. And I think one of my superpowers is when you're the kid of immigrants and you see your parents who love you so much, who want the best for you, have sacrificed for you, struggle so much, you become a very empathetic person. You walk in the shoes of people who have less than you. And you realize that, oh my God, my parents have gone through so much. And I'd overhear them. And all I would think is, oh my God, what am I going to do? I have to help my parents. They can't handle it. They don't know. And there was I lived in a town in New Jersey called Teaneck, New Jersey, which was mostly Black and Jewish. And I had this little neighbor down the street. It was an old Jewish lady, and she sold Avon. And she said to me, honey, why don't you sell some Avon in school and I'll give you some free lipstick? And I was kind of like, I'm not going to go sell Avon. But at that moment, I thought, I gotta go talk to that lady and cut a better deal. That's my mind. I thought, I need to get money. Forget free lipstick. I don't want the lipstick. I want money. And I went to her, and I had watched a TV show, and it said, the deal is 50-50. And so I said to her, I'll sell Avon, but it's got to be 50-50. And she's like, okay. And the first week I sold Avon in the 7th grade out of my locker, I made $200.
Yes.
And, immigrants are really good salespeople. And after a month, I made $800. Mm-hmm. And I started paying down my tuition. But then I had another problem, which is my dad is this very proud, macho Latino guy. And I thought, my dad cannot find out that I'm paying for the school. So I went to the head nun, and I said, listen, you got to send home a letter, make something up, I don't care, whatever. I bring the letter home, and my mother says to my father, what does this letter say? And my father goes, your daughter is a genius, and I told you, Jesus will help us after all. And he was like, that was it. He was so happy because he felt like Jesus had helped us. And I was like, okay, I can solve any problem from this moment on.
Wow. There's so many things that I love about this story that it's amazing because to hear you talk, there's so many lessons that I think many people have already picked up from this, from just the hustle. I mean, you can't start too young, and this has been common amongst many people who have been on the show, is that we all find a way to sell something at an early age, and the initial deal is never good enough, so we always got to make it better. But there's something I want to touch on for a second. You said, you mentioned being an immigrant, fleeing a difficult situation between the political refugees and just the understanding the emotional climate that you grew up in. Would you consider that your unique advantage?
Absolutely.
Today? Yeah.
Yes,
okay.
Absolutely. I mean, I think I always say before I say anything else, I'm an immigrant. I think being an immigrant gives me values that most people in America have forgotten. I'm grateful.
Well, like what? What values in particular?
I think I'm grateful. I don't think that anybody owes me anything. I have to go do it myself. I think that I feel that there is no job that is beneath me even today. I think that, I can do anything I want to do. And I know that life is worse. Like, we complain about this country, and boy, are things tough right now in this country. And it's very painful. But guess what? They're worse in other countries. And also, I believe that when you love your country, when you love something so much, like I do, that you fight for it. And that doesn't mean you're quiet and you're wimpy and you sit around and just take it. No. You fight for things you love.
So let me ask this question then. Well, what are you fighting for today?
Well, I think today, first of all, I wrote the book Self-Made because I so believed that no one was telling the story of people like us. Not people that, I didn't go back to school till I was 45 because I had to finish. I could not go to school. My parents couldn't pay for me to go to college. And so I was able to give myself my own education at 45. So the truth of the matter is, and I didn't go to college because I needed to go to college to make money. I went to college because I really wanted to learn. So I think that today, I just feel like there's such a divide in this country. And we've people have stopped being compassionate about what it is to be someone that comes to this country and really fights and really loves and really gives more than anyone to this country. And it makes me sad. And so I feel the need to constantly remind us of the stories of all these immigrants, of all people that really this country's made of people that have come from other countries and have really worked very hard to make it what it is.
So let me ask this question, because I'm sure you've gotten this before, and I'm curious to know myself. Your journey, did you just wake up one day after the 7th grade and go, you know what? No. I want to win an Emmy and be a president of a TV station. What was that?
I'm glad you mentioned it, because another traumatic thing happened that set me in that path. I mean, I would have never in my wildest imagination ever thought I would work in television, or that wasn't even a possibility.
Right.
I think what happened is, in that same school, in my sophomore year in high school, I was accused of plagiarism. I wrote a story for school, and one of the nuns said to me, I think this is an Ernest Hemingway story, and I don't think you wrote it. And I guess I should have been complimented that somebody thought I was writing like Ernest Hemingway. But
that's not how you interpreted that situation, is it? No.
No, and I really felt victimized. I felt profiled, like I was only one of 3 Latino kids in a school, and I was accused of plagiarism, and I was such a goody two-shoes that I would never plagiarize anything. And I was suspended from school for 3 days while they investigated.
Wow.
And I went home, and I told my parents, and they took the side of the nun. They were like, it doesn't matter. Just ask for forgiveness. It doesn't matter if it's true or not. Life isn't fair. Blah, blah, blah. And I was like, man, what's wrong with these people? I had come to the United States. It was the generation after Martin Luther King, the generation after Gloria Steinem. I felt like I had so many rights, and I was, I felt like that's why my parents brought me here. And my parents were kind of really wimpy, and I was wimpy. I mean, I was told every day, keep your head down and don't speak up.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm blessed because in my anger to the nun, I called the Board of Ed of the state of New Jersey. And thank God, I always say this. This is why I have such a great relationship with African Americans. An African American man answered the phone, who was the head of the board, the Board of Ed. And I said, can these nuns do this? And he said, yes, they can. It's a private school, but you don't have to take it. I can get you an interview with a reporter in your local paper.
Yes.
And this man was more empowered than my parents. And I felt like for once I saw someone of color that was telling me that I was right, that I had rights. And so in that moment, I became impulsive and I did the interview with the newspaper. And it was very shocking because the next day it came out and it said, Cuban girl gets expelled for First Amendment issue.
Huh.
And it was like,
wow, that's escalation.
It's escalation. Yeah.
Woo!
Yeah. And in that, by the way, that same weekend that all of that happened, I wrote an article to 17 magazine about why you shouldn't send your kid to all-girl Catholic school, because that was the magazine that I loved at the time. And I just sent it in. Anyway, the whole thing was like a big drama. It was a big thing. It became a drama in the school. My parents and I had to go to the school, and then the nun, as soon as the article came out, the nun was like, no, I mean, I'm sorry, you got an A. What, you didn't plagiarize, and I don't know what the big deal is. And then she said, and then the head nun said, you're such a great student. In fact, you're so good. We're going to graduate you a year and a half early.
Okay.
So they got rid of it.
Yeah.
But here's the happy ending of the story. The article, the thing, all of this stuff was so crazy that 17 magazine called me and they said, we got your article. We're going to publish your article. We love that you're fighting back, that you're one of those kids that fights back. And we're going to offer you the youngest guest editorship in the history of 17 magazine. So
wow.
At 15, I started taking college classes and I went to 17 magazine in New York City every day. And I started, a whole other career. And because of me writing an article for the magazine, and they kept asking me to write articles because I was, the young girl, 60 Minutes was starting the teenage version of 60 Minutes for Saturday mornings on TV. And somebody called me and they said, would you like to audition to be one of the reporters? Thinking that I was like 19, not thinking that I was 15, 16, And by that point I was 16, almost 17. And I went and I auditioned and I became Lisa Ling. I was, I was like this young reporter. And I had to move to Texas because they were going to do it out of the CBS station in Texas. And I was like, told my parents I was moving, and my parents were like, you cannot leave, blah, 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 blah. And I'm like, guys, you don't get it, but this is a once in a lifetime opportunity. I have to go. And I always say karma is kind of a bitch because I left my parents both crying hysterically, which I always tell the story because so many, again, people of color and immigrants and people that are traditional, they sometimes don't go and find their path because we all have to take care of our parents. And my mother said to me, like later when she read my book, she said, you know what? Thank God you left. I was so sad, but you knew better than we did. Thank God you left that day because I learned English. I learned how to drive. And it changed the course of your life to such a degree that you could help us.
Yeah. And what I'm liking about hearing you in this journey is that the subtitle of your book, Becoming Empowered, Self-Reliant, and Rich in Every Way. I can hear this in your story as you continue to talk. Now, I'm curious to know something though. You've had the opportunity, obviously, in television, and you've got, the Emmys, you've done a lot of things. why all of a sudden this journey into real estate? Help me understand. I'm just going to assume that you've got a plan, a master plan that you were still executing.
Yeah, I think that when I started in television, first of all, I do have to tell you the story how I started really in Telemundo, because I think it's a very good story for your listeners. I was a reporter, teen reporter, and I got an incredible offer at 19 to go to CBS Network. And I was, and I had not finished school at all. And I was on this track to being this Latina network correspondent. And I was put on this program to be a stringer and go all over the country and just that means you do a lot of interviews that get put in the nightly news and you're not in them. They're kind of like, you're kind of like a factory worker doing a lot of interviews, but it's teaching you how to interview. And one of the people I interviewed was a man named Norman Lear, who was a very big producer in television in the 80s. And he's like, what nationality are you? And I said, I'm Latina. And he goes, my partner and I just bought the first Spanish TV station in the United States. You should come and work for us. And I said, sir, no offense, but that's kind of like, to me, anything Latino, anything Spanish was like beneath me. I wanted to be at CBS and be a network correspondent. And he said to me, I said, sir, no offense, but I'm on the way to being a network correspondent at CBS. And he said, young lady, are you rich? And I said, no, I'm not. And he goes, well, I'm rich. And he goes, and I'm telling you, do you not know the Latino market is going to be a multi-billion-dollar business? And that if you're employee one of the first Spanish TV station, you will be a very wealthy woman. And I was like, damn.
Right.
And I always say, and I think this is a big key to the story. I think if I was my son today, who's had many more opportunities than I had, I might have gone for the ego thing, which would have been to be talent. But in that moment, knowing that my parents had no money, knowing that I had no money, I went for this man that sounded smarter than me, and I became employee number one of Channel 47 in New York, which eventually became Telemundo. And I want your listeners to hear that, because in life, when you take a risk, when you do something from your pain, from your culture, from your, it's like what happened in hip hop. When I made that decision, to this day, I think it was the greatest decision that has impacted my life for the rest of my life.
Indeed. And I've seen a number of times and situations in which, as an entrepreneur, you will make a decision based upon, we'll call it the short-term financials, as opposed to the actual opportunity that's before us. Because we may be looking at, well, I know I'm going to get paid tomorrow if I do this. But yeah, that's big, but that's for someone else. And we may not consider ourselves, quote unquote, worthy of what someone else could be literally speaking to us about at that moment. And you were able to put yourself in a situation and go, yeah, that's me. That's exactly what I want. And I don't know how it's all going to work, but you were willing to go down that path. So I guess my question is, how did you manifest the best ways of being able to make such a decision with such limited information? Hello there, entrepreneur. This is Jay Massey, and what I want to say to you is that the number one mistake that I have ever made in business, number one, has been waiting too long to do the books, waiting too long to get the bookkeepers, the accountants, the CPAs, the CFOs involved, and I don't want you to make that same mistake. That mistake cost me over six figures, and now for a significant discount, you have the ability to get your books together using FreshBooks. So what I want you to do is I want you to go over to gofreshbooks.com/cashflow diary. Again, that's gofreshbooks.com/cashflow diary. FreshBooks is the easy to use software designed to help you, the small business owner, the freelancer, get organized and save time on invoicing, getting paid faster, keeping those books in order so that it becomes a bonus for you to do your taxes as opposed to a burden. Go over to gofreshbooks.com/cashflow diary and get started today. And now let's get back to the rest of the story.
I think I've always been an old soul. I've always been very grounded. And again, being empathetic to other people, I realized, you know what? This guy is telling me truth. He's speaking truth. And he seems like a grounded, solid person. He didn't seem like he was not a flaky Hollywood kind of person. And I went to work for him. And now I'm going to answer your real estate question. How did real estate happen to me? Well, again, I was employee number one. And it was a rinky-dinky little, it's like what you would think a college radio station would be. Rinky-dinky little station. And I noticed that Norman and his partner, all they cared about was, let's buy a building. Let's buy a building. Let's. And I noticed that, wow, these people care more about the building the thing is in than almost the thing. Like, yeah, you run the thing. We don't care, but we want the building. and I just, it was like note to self kind of thing, right? And then his partner, Jerry Parencio, who just passed away a year ago, was also a boxing promoter. And so he would always say to me, listen, it's Saturday and Sunday. Do you want to take some celebrities to the boxing match? Because I can't go, whatever. And that's how I met everyone in Hollywood. Like, I worked running the station 5 days a week. And on the weekend, I was the schlepper that took celebrities and executives to boxing matches. And I would overhear everyone's conversation. And I think that's another thing that's important to tell your listeners is everybody goes, I need a mentor. I need a mentor. If you ask people, can you be my mentor? It's off-putting. It's like they have
say that again.
People don't have enough time in their lives to be mentors to a million people. What you have to do is put yourself in the line of mentor people and volunteer, work late, do whatever it takes to overhear their conversations. That's the key to life.
Yeah, I almost wish you could like see the size of the smile on my face right now, because you are at the same time educating so many on exactly how to make it happen, and reminding me myself of this, because this is exactly what we still do today. Because you can put yourself in the path of opportunity if you're willing to do what it takes, which is code for work in ways that may not seem conventional. Because I was taught a long time ago, you're going to get paid. You may not get paid today, you may not get paid tomorrow, but you're eventually going to get paid for work you did today, so long as you're doing it in the correct ways and for the right people. And these are all things that continue. So when it comes down to, you've got a lot of things going on. And recently I was actually telling my wife, who has, multiple degrees, comes from a family full of degrees and all this other stuff. I was like, what I think would be fun is for me to go to, because I am now actually interested in certain subjects in college that are taught in college. And I'm just like, I think it would be fun to do that. And she looked at me very weird because, I'm just not the college type, but I still want to learn more things. So
yeah.
I'm curious, you said you made the decision to go back, and you now have a master's and a doctorate. Where did that come from? Was it the same thing or something else?
I think similar, but a little different. I think, so to get you to what had happened at that moment, a lot of things had to align for me to go to school, because I'm an immigrant. I would never give up work, right?
Right.
So I think what happened is, just to take you up to how I got there is, so I ran this little TV station. I worked my way up. Along the way, that little station became Telemundo. I ended up being the first woman to ever run a Latina to run a TV network. And while I was in, it was not easy to do all this, because even though I was employee one, along the way, a lot of, here I was in the Latino market, all of a sudden white people got excited about the Latino market. All of a sudden, there were less Latinos and more white people doing Telemundo.
Right.
And so there was a lot of competition. So
all of a sudden, everybody learned to speak Spanish. Is that what you're saying?
All of a sudden. And even didn't speak Spanish and still thought they knew. Yeah. So I think what I did is, I think there is no bad job. I just thought, this school is my business school. And I'm going to learn what everybody's doing wrong. I'm going to be like a mastermind. I'm just going to observe. And sooner or later, I'm going to always have the right answer. I'm going to always have the right thing. And that's what I did. And I ended up running the network. So I don't want people that work in companies and are not entrepreneurs. Not everybody is an entrepreneur day one. And sometimes you're just an entrepreneur as a side hustle. And sometimes you're entrepreneurial in your investments. But regardless, every day of your life, in whatever crappy job you have to think, this is my business. What would I do? What are they doing wrong? What are they doing right? Write it down. You have to be studying every day of your life. When and I think it is good to be in corporation sometimes, because you really learn. You can fast track your learning if you pay attention.
Oh, very true.
So later on, we sold the company. I became Latina Tyler Perry. I've produced 700 TV shows. I also started a business launching TV networks around the world for American companies. So I've done like ESPN, HBO, Fox in Latin America and in other countries. And in 2008, when the economy crashed, I had been called by NBC to be on Celebrity Apprentice. I'm the first Latina that was on Celebrity Apprentice. And NBC called me because they said, we need someone. Donald Trump has a lot of issues with Latinos, and we want someone who is fierce and who can talk back to Donald Trump. And over the years, I had worked for 7 billionaires as my clients. I knew how to talk to tough billionaires. And I went on the show, and he yelled at me in the first episode, and I sort of talked to him. I put him in his place. And he was like, I like you. Stay on the show. We're going to fight so much. We're going to get great ratings, which I think tells you everything about Donald Trump. But anyway, I came off that show, and my son was 8 years old. And I had really gotten all these calls from Fortune 500s to speak, because all the multicultural women were like, we want to meet that girl. Who is she? She's not an actress, but she's like self-made. And I did that tour, and the economy had crashed, and so many of the shows I was producing were like put on hold, like it happens in TV. And at the time I said to, my husband, I was panicking, and my husband said to me, what is your problem? Why are you freaking out? You don't have to work another day in your life. And I said to him, oh my God, that's not true. And he goes, it's true. He bought all these commercial buildings because, again, once I started making money, I thought to myself, again, Norman Lear and Jerry Printer said, when you make money, don't waste your money on bling. Buy buildings. Buy buildings, and someday the buildings will be worth more than your business. So I had always had this parallel track of mission, which was my TV shows and my, me doing my Latino programming, and then money. And I was taking all the money and investing it in buildings. And by the time 2008 came along, I had 16 buildings, and I had made 5 times the money in real estate than in TV. And I could live off of the rents of my commercial buildings.
Exactly. And that when it comes down to it, I hope everyone's listening. You work your business, whatever that is. And as you do study, you can study economic history. You can study whatever you want. You will find this is a very similar pattern. I mean, we get the privilege of using our genius in any way, shape that we can. Yours obviously came out in the realm of television. It's not like you knew that it just happened, and you were willing to respond and say yes. Correct. When the opportunities came. But I have a question for you, because this is something I know I still feel today, and I'm wondering if you've had any sort of experience here, because there comes this point at which those in your community, the Latino community, can probably begin to look at you and they begin to place their, we'll say, maybe inappropriately or appropriately, place their hope in you. And now you can feel, at least I feel, a very large sense of responsibility.
Yeah,
I'm curious if that's something you've ever had to handle or deal with in any way, shape, or.
I mean, I think I have, but I think, just to go back to your question about school, I think the school thing changed my life. Here's what happened. My son, in that year, 2008, that the economy crashed, my son was 8 years old, and he's like, he didn't like school. And he goes, Mom, why do I have to go to college someday? You didn't finish college, and you've done really well. And I thought, I don't know. I mean, I didn't finish college, and I didn't go to college because of circumstances. I don't know. I mean, it worked out, and I'm not one of those people that believes college is everything. I think so much of college is a lie. And, I've met a lot of people from Ivy League schools, and they don't know what they're doing. And I personally hire all kids from community college because I think they have more fire in the belly. So I don't even believe in that myth. However, I thought to myself, I don't want him to think that him going to school, I want him to know it's his choice. It's not something that circumstance will not provide for him. And so I thought to myself, and my husband at the time said to me, if you had one regret in your life, if you were to die, if you had cancer right now and died in a year, what would be the number one thing on your bucket list? And I said, going to school. I think I wanted to at least try it, right? And he goes, so try it for a year. And so I went into school, and this is very painful, but it's the truth. I went into school, and I realized that as mature as I was, as an old soul as I was, and that in career years, I was at that point like 65. I realized that I had that the things that were holding me back to even be greater is that I had never really lived through the phases of my life. Like when I went to school with all 22-year-olds and I realized they were going through what 22-year-olds go through, I realized in some ways I'm really immature. Emotionally, I'm immature. And I think the whole reason for school in hindsight was for my emotional self to catch up to my intellectual self and my hustle self. And I had the time to really look at my life from above myself. I chose psychology school. I had the ability to heal my traumas. I had the ability to realize that as much as I had on my own chutzpah, as my Jewish friends would say, really gotten very far, my damage, my trauma, my issues were still holding me back. And I realized that to go to the next level of life, I had to clean it all out. And I think in the years I went to school and I went for a year and then I decided, no, I'm doing a master's and a doctorate. I wrote a dissertation on women of color and how we were not, how all of a sudden we were doing better in entrepreneurship than working for other people because the system in America doesn't really respond to our traumas and our issues. And so I wrote this dissertation, and I realized when I wrote the dissertation that I had written what I needed to do next. So in answering your question about the community, I realized that the reason those women were calling me after The Apprentice to go speak at all these companies is because if we don't see people like us and not people that are all actresses and athletes, people that have really worked hard, people that are willing to go back to school, people that are doing all these things, if we don't see it, we can't be it. And so I realized that to those who much is given, much is expected. And I had already made money. Not that I didn't want to make more, but I had made enough money to retire if I wanted to.
Right.
And so I thought, I have to focus on these women. I have to focus on Latina, African American, Asian, Middle Eastern women, Indian women. I have to focus on these women that in this country are not seen. And at that point, having gone through school, I realized the answer is economic empowerment, period. That's the answer. Everything else, we're talking about Me Too, time's up, blah, blah, blah. Great. I'm sorry, but if you have FU money, you don't put up with a lot.
Right.
So to me, I felt like my mission and my purpose for the rest of my life, and the reason I chose women, and listen, so many men come to all my events. The reason I chose women is because I had so many statistics that women that are multicultural bring the money home. They change their communities. They influence the children. And I realized it is a family system problem, which is what they teach you in psychology. So in order to change the family system, I have to change the women. And it's not change, it's inform them of what is out there for them.
Yeah, oh man, the challenge of this format is that there's never enough time. And right now I'm just like, I just want to keep going. But for those that have listened this far and want to find out more, follow you, figure out, how they might continue their journey in their own self-discovery, what's going to be the best way for them to catch up with you?
Well, if you want to reach me, you can email me at info@becomingselfmade.com. And I told you that I was going to offer everyone, this is free. I don't charge people. I did a webinar series, 3-part webinar series called Self-Made Mastery. And it really is like, if you don't know anything at all about anything, you start at the bottom and you watch all 3 and you're going to know how to become self-made. So I would go for that to www.becomingselfmade.com/mastery. And go to my website. I interview all kinds of self-made people, young, old, every color, every age, every kind of profession. I do webinars. It's all free. It's my give back.
Totally get that 100%. Now, as we wind down, I've got a final question for you because I think your answer is going to challenge a number of the people that are listening. In fact, there's a number of people listening right now who they've reached what I like to call the precipice of decision. It's that point at which they go, oh, you know what? If Nely did it, I can do it. And they've been listening this far and they're secretly cheering as they're running on the treadmill going, yeah. But at the same time, like I know, when we reach these moments of decision, we often have a companion, and that companion comes in the form of a voice. It's a voice that reminds us. It says, are you sure that's not going to happen? Do you understand who you are in the world right now? No one's going to buy anything from you. No one's going to listen to you. You have no authority. Yeah. And it reminds us of all the things and why it won't work. And for some people, they're related to that voice.
Yeah.
So my question to you is as follows. Let's pretend that this time it's going to be different, Nely. They're going to actually follow through, and they're going to follow through in the next 24 to 48 hours. Mm-hmm. What would you suggest that they do?
This is easy. I think I have to tell you all that I'm a turtle. I have not done anything quick. I think that what gets us down and why we begin things and never finish them is because we see people and we see like the grand success of the person. And life is in baby steps. I'm going to tell you right now, on Sunday, take 1 hour, your next Sunday, 1 hour, and take something out of your closet and sell it on eBay or Amazon. It takes literally 5 minutes to do that. Take a picture, put it up. If you don't know how to do that, get your kid to do it. I think we all have to have a side hustle 1 hour a week. If you have a car that's sitting there and it's not working and somebody isn't Ubering or lifting on it or whatever, it's depreciating and you're wasting that asset. If you have an extra room in your house, you should be Airbnb-ing it, or you should be, if a garage is available, start with 1 hour a week. That's it. You're going to get addicted. And that money has to be put away, and you have to save 2 years of salary, which everybody says, I can't do. Well, I've done it a million times. Yes, you can. You have to sacrifice and take baby steps. So I'll tell you what I do, because I think it'll help you all. Every January 1st, I say, what are the 3 things I'm going to accomplish this year? And I don't mean 20 things, 3 things. And sometimes it's like a girly thing, like laser hair removal is one of the 3. It doesn't have to be grandiose, okay? It could be, I'm going to lose weight. It could be, I'm going to whatever. And it could be, I'm going to make $1,000 on a side hustle. Whatever it is, 3 things. I break it down, and every month I go and I do my month list. What are the 3 things I'm going to do this month to get to do those 3 things? And I break it down to 3 things a week. Every Sunday, I write down, what are the 3 things I'm doing this week to get to my goal? And then every day, what are the 3 things, little things I do every day? Life is in baby steps. If you break it down, you can't believe what you accomplish in a year.
Love it. I love All of it. As I said, I knew it would challenge people, and that's exactly what I was after. So, and I definitely appreciate the way you attack life, the way that you have approached everything that you have done and are doing and continue to do. And I definitely want to thank you for taking the time to invest your heart, because I can hear it when you speak, and your knowledge, your wisdom, and your insight here with us today at the Cashflow Diary.
Thank you so much, and thank you for what you're doing. It's so important. I want everyone to hear that the most important thing we can all do is build wealth, not to buy expensive things, but to change our families and our communities. And it's urgent. We have to do it.
All right, ladies and gentlemen, you know what time it is. It's time for you to move at the speed of instruction. What does that mean today? Today it means becoming selfmade.com. Why? Because it is your turn. Wealth is for everyone, and that means you. And you and I get the privilege of taking action each and every day towards those goals, becoming the best version of ourselves that we were originally intended to be. And here's the best part. You heard it said. It happens in baby steps. Ladies and gentlemen, it's been fun talking to you today. I look forward to talking to you soon. Until next time.